"Don't worry, I'll be out late," she texted. My note back: "Hope that address was worth losing me." That single exchange would become the epitome of everything wrong with our marriage, though I didn't know it yet. What I did know was that something felt fundamentally off about the woman I'd been married to for 6 years, and that night would be when all my suspicions started crystallizing into undeniable truth. I was sitting in my home office around 9:15 p.m., finishing up some project proposals for the marketing firm where I worked as a senior account manager, when my phone buzzed with an incoming call. I glanced at the screen expecting maybe my buddy Jason calling about our weekend plans, but instead saw my wife's name flashing. That alone was unusual since she typically just walked into whatever room I was in rather than calling from another part of the house. I answered on the second ring. "Hey, everything okay?" There was background noise on her end, muffled voices and what sounded like car doors closing. "Babe, I'm so sorry to call this late, but something came up at work. There's an emergency leadership retreat happening this weekend up in the mountains, and they need me there tonight. I'm already on my way with some colleagues. I'll be back Sunday evening." I sat up straighter in my chair, my coffee going cold in my hand. "A retreat? You didn't mention anything about this at breakfast this morning." We'd spent 45 minutes together over eggs and toast just 12 hours ago, discussing mundane weekend plans like grocery shopping and finally fixing the leaking faucet in the guest bathroom. Not once had she mentioned any work event, emergency or otherwise. I know. It was completely last minute. Marcus called an emergency meeting at 4 and told us we had to leave by 8. You know how he is with these spontaneous team-building things. I tried texting you earlier, but you must have been in meetings. I pulled my phone away from my ear and checked my message history. Nothing. No texts, no missed calls, no emails. I didn't get any texts from you. Oh, that's weird. Service has been spotty. Anyway, I'm already halfway there and the signal keeps cutting out. I just wanted to let you know so you wouldn't worry. I'll call you tomorrow when we have better reception, okay? Love you, gotta go." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone screen for a long moment, replaying the conversation in my head. Something about it felt rehearsed, too smooth, like she'd practiced exactly what to say. My wife Emma worked as a regional sales manager for a mid-sized pharmaceutical company, a position that occasionally required travel but never with less than a week's notice. These companies planned their retreats months in advance, budgeted for them, sent calendar invites. They didn't just spontaneously throw people in cars on Friday nights and send them to mountain cabins. I tried calling her back immediately. It went straight to voicemail. Tried again 5 minutes later. Same result. By the third attempt, I was pacing our living room, that uncomfortable knot of suspicion tightening in my gut. The rational part of my brain insisted I was overreacting, that emergency work situations happen, that I should trust my wife of 6 years. But the instinctive part, the part that had been noticing small inconsistencies for weeks now, was screaming that something was very wrong. I thought back to breakfast that morning. Emma had been distracted, scrolling through her phone more than usual, smiling at texts she didn't share. When I'd asked what was funny, she'd quickly locked her screen and said it was just memes from her work group chat. Then there was last Tuesday when I'd come home early from a client meeting and found her on the phone in our bedroom, speaking in hushed tones. She'd quickly ended the call when she heard me and claimed it was just her mother, even though her mom's contact name hadn't been on the screen in the brief second I'd glimpsed it. And the week before that, she'd suddenly announced she was joining a new gym across town, despite us having a perfectly good fitness center 3 blocks from our house that we'd belonged to for years. "I need a change of scenery," she'd explained. "Plus they have better yoga classes." I'd thought nothing of it at the time, but now these small details were assembling themselves into a pattern I didn't want to see. Against my better judgment, or maybe because of it, I decided to verify her story. If this really was a legitimate work retreat, I'd feel foolish for doubting her but relieved to be wrong. I Googled her company's main office number and called, fully expecting to get an automated system at this hour. Instead, a live voice answered. "Henderson Pharmaceuticals, this is security, how can I help you?" "Hi, yes, I'm calling to verify information about a company retreat that's happening this weekend. My wife works there and mentioned she's attending." There was a pause, the sound of typing. What department is your wife in, sir? Regional sales. Emma Thornton. More typing, a longer pause. I'm not showing any approved retreats scheduled for this month, sir. We have one planned for early November, but nothing this weekend. Can I ask who's calling? My mouth went dry. No, that's okay. I must have gotten my dates confused. Thank you. I hung up before he could ask anything else. For several minutes I just stood there in the middle of our living room, surrounded by 6 years of accumulated life together. The couch we'd picked out on our second anniversary. The bookshelf I'd spent an entire weekend assembling while Emma handed me screws and made terrible construction puns. The framed photos from our wedding, our honeymoon in Cancun, last Christmas with both our families. Everything looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but somehow it all felt different now, like I was seeing these objects through new eyes that recognized them as relics of something that might already be over. I wanted to be wrong. Desperately wanted this to be a misunderstanding, a communication error, anything other than what it was starting to look like. But I couldn't ignore what the security guard had told me. No retreat. No emergency meeting. Which meant Emma had deliberately lied to me about where she was going and who she was with. I thought about calling her parents, her best friend Sarah, even her brother, but what would I say? Hey, do you know where Emma really is because I think she's lying to me? That felt premature, paranoid. Except I didn't feel paranoid. I felt certain, in that sick, gut-level way you feel certain about bad news before it's confirmed. I returned to my office and opened my laptop, suddenly remembering something that had bothered me weeks ago but that I'd dismissed. Emma had recently started bringing her work laptop home every night, something she'd never done before. She claimed her company was implementing new security protocols that required employees to update software remotely, but she'd become noticeably protective of it, always keeping it closed when I was nearby, taking it with her even when she went to the kitchen for water. We'd always had an open device policy in our marriage, both of us knowing each other's passcodes, occasionally using each other's phones or computers when convenient. It was never about surveillance, just about not having arbitrary barriers in a relationship built on trust. But in recent weeks, I'd noticed her changing her laptop password, angling the screen away from me when I walked by, quickly closing windows when I entered the room. At the time I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid, that everyone deserves some privacy, that there was probably a reasonable explanation. Now, in light of tonight's phone call, those small protections looked less like privacy and more like secrecy. I sat at my desk and pulled up our family tablet, the iPad we kept in the kitchen for recipes, shopping lists, and random internet browsing. Emma sometimes used it for work emails when her laptop was charging, and if I remembered correctly, her work email account was still logged in from last week when she'd been showing me photos from her company picnic. I navigated to the Mail app, and sure enough, her account was still active. My hands hesitated over the keyboard. This felt like crossing a line, invading privacy in a way I'd never done before. We'd built our marriage on trust, and here I was about to violate that trust by snooping through her email. But then again, she'd just lied to me about where she was spending the weekend. She'd fabricated an entire work retreat, a story detailed enough to include colleagues and timing and mountain locations. If trust was already broken, was I really the one breaking it by trying to find the truth? I took a breath and started scrolling through her recent emails, feeling my heart pound with each swipe. Most of it was exactly what I expected: work correspondence, meeting confirmations, client follow-ups, automated newsletters she never read. Nothing suspicious, nothing that indicated anything unusual was happening in her life. I was about to close the app, feeling equal parts relieved and guilty, when I noticed something in her trash folder. I almost didn't check it, thinking I'd gone far enough already, but something made me tap it anyway. There, deleted just that afternoon, was a confirmation email from Mountain View Cabin Rentals. "Thank you for your reservation," the email began. "We're excited to host you and your partner for your romantic weekend getaway." My stomach dropped as I kept reading. The reservation was for tonight through Sunday, checking in at 10 p.m., checking out at 11 a.m. Sunday morning. The cabin was located near Lake Harmony, about 90 miles north of our city. The booking was made under both our names, Emma and David Thornton, though I'd never heard of this rental company and certainly hadn't agreed to any weekend trip. At the bottom of the confirmation was a note Emma had apparently added during booking. Anniversary celebration, please have champagne and rose petals ready. Our anniversary was in April. 6 months away. It was October now. I read the email 3 times, each pass making me feel sicker than the last. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a work retreat or a miscommunication. This was deliberate, planned, calculated. She'd booked a romantic cabin under our names but wasn't taking me. She'd deleted the confirmation email, probably assuming I'd never see it. She'd called with an elaborate cover story about emergency meetings and mountain retreats. Everything about this was intentional deception. I took screenshots of the email, texting them to myself and saving them to 3 different cloud storage accounts. Some distant, practical part of my brain was already thinking about evidence, about proof, about what comes after you discover your wife has been lying to you about where she spends her nights. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind racing through possibilities I didn't want to consider but couldn't ignore. By 3 a.m., I was back at my laptop, methodically going through our financial records with the kind of focus I usually reserved for work presentations. We'd always maintained a joint checking account for household expenses while keeping separate accounts for personal spending, a system that had worked perfectly fine for 6 years because we trusted each other. Now I was realizing that trust might have been my biggest mistake. I logged into our joint account first, downloading the last 6 months of statements and opening them in a spreadsheet. At first glance, everything looked normal. Mortgage payments, utilities, groceries, insurance, the usual rhythm of married life. But as I started highlighting recurring charges, patterns began emerging that I'd never noticed before because I'd never had reason to look. There was a charge from Bella's florist every other Friday for the past 4 months, always exactly $78. I'd never received flowers from Emma during that time, never seen any arrangements in our house. I checked my calendar to see if those Fridays coincided with any occasions I'd forgotten, birthdays of friends, sympathy arrangements, anything that would explain regular flower purchases. Nothing matched up. Then I found the restaurant charges. Morton's Steakhouse, the most expensive place downtown where reservations required a 2-week wait and entrees started at $60. We talked about going there for our anniversary next year, had even joked about needing to save up for it. Yet here were charges from Morton's appearing once a month for the past 5 months, always on Wednesday evenings. I distinctly remembered being home alone several of those Wednesdays, eating leftover pasta while Emma claimed to be working late on regional sales reports. The amounts ranged from $200 to $300 per visit, far more than one person would spend alone. I felt my jaw clench as I highlighted each charge in red, watching the pattern become undeniable. Someone was enjoying expensive dinners at Morton's, but it wasn't me. The jewelry store charges came next. Cartwright & Sons, a high-end jeweler in the luxury shopping district where we'd bought Emma's engagement ring 7 years ago. 3 separate purchases over 4 months. $450, $620, and $890. I'd received no gifts from Emma during that time. No watch, no cufflinks, no anniversary present since that wasn't for another 6 months anyway. Which meant either she was buying jewelry for herself and hiding it, or she was buying gifts for someone else. I opened her closet mentally cataloging what I'd seen her wear recently, but couldn't recall any new jewelry pieces. The most damning discovery came when I filtered the statement by ATM withdrawals. Starting 5 months ago, Emma had begun withdrawing $300 in cash every single Tuesday from an ATM location I didn't recognize. I copied the address and pulled it up on Google Maps, feeling my stomach drop as the street view loaded. The ATM was located outside a convenience store in the industrial district on the east side of town, nearly 40 minutes from both our house and her office. There was no legitimate reason for Emma to be in that neighborhood. It wasn't on her route to work, wasn't near any clients, wasn't close to any friends or family. The area was mostly warehouses, auto repair shops, and cheap apartment complexes. Yet every Tuesday for 20 weeks, she'd driven out of her way to withdraw cash from that specific location. I did the math quickly. $300 times 20 weeks equaled $6,000. $6,000 withdrawn in cash from an ATM in a sketchy neighborhood, money that left no paper trail of where it went or what it purchased. I sat back in my chair feeling physically ill. This wasn't impulsive behavior or a recent mistake. This was methodical, planned, ongoing. 5 months of secret flower purchases, expensive dinners, jewelry gifts, and untraceable cash withdrawals. 5 months of my wife systematically spending our money on something or someone she was hiding from me. I checked our credit card statements next, finding more of the same. Charges at boutique hotels during supposed work trips that her company calendar didn't reflect. Expensive wine purchases from specialty shops. A recurring charge at some place called Serenity Day Spa for couples massages booked every third Saturday when Emma claimed to be having girls' day with Sarah. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, impossible to explain away as anything other than what it obviously was. My wife was having an affair, had been having one for at least 5 months, and was funding it with our joint money while lying to my face about working late and emergency retreats and yoga classes across town. I printed everything, organized it chronologically, highlighted every suspicious charge. By the time dawn broke through our bedroom windows, I had 47 pages of financial records documenting my wife's systematic deception. 47 pages of proof that the woman I'd built a life with had been living a second life I knew nothing about. Saturday morning I forced myself to act normal, or at least what normal was supposed to look like when your entire marriage was imploding. I made coffee, walked our dog Bailey around the neighborhood, responded to work emails like my world hadn't just collapsed. The mundane routine felt surreal, like I was watching myself perform the role of unsuspecting husband while my actual thoughts spiraled through everything I discovered. Around 10 I decided to call the cabin rental company, figuring I might as well gather as much information as possible before confronting Emma. I pulled up the confirmation email on my phone and dialed the number listed at the bottom. A cheerful woman answered on the third ring. Mountain View Cabin Rentals. This is Patricia speaking. How can I help you today? I steadied my voice, trying to sound casual. Hi Patricia, I'm calling to confirm my reservation for this weekend. The booking should be under David Thornton. Just one moment, let me pull that up for you. I heard keyboard clicking, then a pause. Okay, yes, I have it right here. You're checked in for cabin 12, tonight through Sunday morning. Checkout is at 11. Now I see here you requested our romance package with champagne and rose petals. That's right. I just wanted to make sure everything was set up properly for our anniversary celebration. The lie came easier than I expected. Absolutely, we have everything ready. The champagne is chilling and we'll have the petals arranged on the bed before you arrive. Is there anything else you'd like us to include? We can arrange for a private chef dinner or couples massage if you're interested. No, that should be perfect. What time did I indicate we'd be arriving? Your note said approximately 10 p.m. Will that still work, or do you need to adjust the time? 10 p.m., exactly when Emma had said she'd arrive at her fake work retreat. That's still accurate. And just to confirm, the reservation is definitely for 2 people, correct? Yes, sir. Cabin 12 sleeps 2 comfortably. It's one of our most popular units for couples. Private deck, lake view, hot tub, the works. You picked a great weekend too, weather should be perfect. I thanked Patricia and ended the call, my hands shaking slightly as I set down the phone. Anniversary celebration. Romance package. Champagne and rose petals. Emma had meticulously planned this weekend, had thought through every detail to make it special and romantic, just not with me. I needed to know more, needed to understand who she was doing this for. I called Sarah, Emma's best friend since college, the person she supposedly spent every other Saturday with getting manicures and brunch. Sarah and I had always gotten along fine, had spent countless double dates and holiday dinners together. If anyone would know what was really going on in Emma's life, it would be her. David, hey, what's up? Sarah sounded genuinely happy to hear from me, which made what I was about to do feel even more uncomfortable. Hey Sarah, quick question. Did Emma mention anything to you about a work retreat this weekend? She left last night and said it was some emergency leadership thing up in the mountains. There was a pause, just long enough to confirm my suspicions. A work retreat? No, she didn't say anything about that. Actually, we just had lunch together yesterday afternoon and she seemed totally normal. Didn't mention any work trips at all. My chest tightened. You had lunch with her yesterday? Yeah, at that Italian place near her office. She actually seemed kind of distracted now that I think about it, kept checking her phone and smiling at messages. I asked if everything was okay and she just said she was excited about weekend plans. I figured she meant plans with you. Weekend plans. Not work plans, not retreat plans. Weekend plans she was excited about. Did she say what those plans were? No, I asked but she was kind of vague about it. Just said she had something special coming up. Why, what's going on, David? Is everything all right? I could hear the concern creeping into Sarah's voice, could tell she was starting to piece together that something was wrong. I'm not sure yet. Listen, if Emma contacts you this weekend, can you not mention that we talked? I'm trying to figure something out. David, you're scaring me. What's happening? I'll explain everything soon, I promise. I just need to verify some things first. Thanks, Sarah. I hung up before she could press further, before I had to admit out loud what I was beginning to accept as truth. Emma wasn't at a work retreat. She was at a romantic cabin with someone else, someone she'd been seeing for months, someone she bought flowers and jewelry for, someone she spent hundreds of dollars taking to expensive dinners. Someone she was excited enough about to book an anniversary celebration 6 months early. I stared at the address from the cabin rental confirmation, feeling something shift inside me. I could sit here spiraling through anxiety and speculation, or I could go see the truth for myself. I grabbed my keys and wallet, texted my buddy Jason that I might need backup later without explaining why, and pulled up directions to Lake Harmony on my phone. 90 miles north, about 90 minutes in Saturday traffic. I'd be there by noon, hours before Emma expected anyone to show up. The drive gave me too much time to think, to replay our entire relationship looking for signs I'd missed. Had she seemed distant at our last anniversary dinner? Had there been clues in how she'd pulled away from physical intimacy over the summer? I'd attributed it to work stress, to the normal ebb and flow of a long-term marriage, never imagining the real reason was that her attention had shifted to someone else entirely. By the time I pulled off the highway toward Lake Harmony, I'd cycled through anger, betrayal, and a strange calm determination. I wasn't going there to cause a scene or confront anyone. I was going to document everything, to see the truth with my own eyes, to gather the evidence I'd need for whatever came next. Mountain View Cabins turned out to be a collection of upscale rental properties scattered around the lake, each one positioned for maximum privacy with thick pine trees between units. I parked on a side road about a quarter mile from Cabin 12, not wanting my car to be visible if Emma or whoever she was with decided to look outside. The walk through the woods gave me time to prepare myself for whatever I was about to see, though nothing really prepares you for watching your marriage end in real time. I approached Cabin 12 from the back, staying in the tree line where the shadows kept me hidden. The cabin itself was exactly what the website had promised. Rustic charm meets modern luxury, with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the lake and a wraparound deck complete with that hot tub Patricia had mentioned. And parked in the gravel driveway, right next to Emma's silver Honda, was an unfamiliar truck. Metallic blue Ford F-150, relatively new, with one of those university alumni stickers on the back window. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in on the license plate, taking multiple clear photos before moving closer to the cabin. Through the large windows I could see into the main living area where a fire was crackling in the stone fireplace. Emma was standing near the kitchen counter wearing jeans and a sweater I'd never seen before, laughing at something. Next to her stood a man I didn't recognize, tall and athletic-looking with dark hair, holding 2 wine glasses. He said something that made Emma laugh harder, that genuine full-body laugh she used to give me back when we first started dating. I watched as he handed her a glass and they clinked them together in some kind of toast. The casual intimacy of the moment was worse than if I'd caught them in bed together. This wasn't just physical affair. This looked like a relationship, like 2 people who'd built their own private world together. I recorded video through the window, making sure to capture clear shots of both their faces, the cabin interior, the timestamp on my phone. My hands were remarkably steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. Emma leaned into the man, resting her head on his shoulder as they looked at something on a laptop positioned on the coffee table. I moved slightly to get a better angle and saw what they were viewing: real estate listings. They were scrolling through houses, pointing at features, clearly discussing properties with the kind of serious interest people have when they're actually planning to buy. "That one has the master suite you wanted," I heard the man say through the partially open window. His voice was deep, confident, the voice of someone who had no idea he was about to have his life complicated significantly. "And it's in that neighborhood near the good schools," Emma replied. "We could actually make this work, Carl. Colorado could be our fresh start." Carl. So now the mystery man had a name. And apparently, they weren't just having an affair, they were planning an entire future together. In Colorado. With good schools. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't some casual fling or midlife crisis. Emma was planning to leave me, to move across the country, to start a whole new life with this Carl person. And she'd been planning it for months based on all those financial records I'd found. I screenshot the license plate again, then used a public records app on my phone to run a search. Within minutes I had a name to match the plate. Carl Henderson, age 34, registered address in the neighboring county. I cross-referenced the name with Emma's company directory that she'd left bookmarked on our tablet and found him. Carl Henderson, Senior Marketing Coordinator in the Corporate Communications Department. Same company, different division. They worked together. I watched them for another 20 minutes, documenting everything. The way Carl's hand rested casually on Emma's lower back. The way she looked up at him with an expression of complete comfort and trust. The way they moved around each other in the kitchen with the practiced ease of people who'd done this before, many times before. At one point Emma's phone rang and I saw her face change as she looked at the screen. She showed it to Carl with an eye roll before answering. "Hey babe, yeah, I'm here. The retreat is good, really intensive sessions today." Her voice had shifted into that artificially bright tone she used when she was performing rather than being genuine. She was talking to me, lying to me in real time while standing 5 feet from her affair partner. "No, the signal is terrible up here like I said. I probably won't be able to call much this weekend." "Okay, love you too, bye." She hung up and immediately kissed Carl, and I had to turn away. I'd seen enough, had more than enough evidence to prove exactly what was happening. I made my way back to my car, my mind already shifting into strategic mode. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about protecting myself and making sure I came out of this divorce with everything I deserved. Back in my car, I ran a more comprehensive search on Carl Henderson, finding his social media profiles, his LinkedIn, his entire digital footprint. Divorced 2 years ago, no kids listed, currently renting an apartment about 15 miles from our house. His Facebook was mostly private, but his Instagram was public, and scrolling through it I found photos from the past several months that made everything click into place. There was Carl at a company training seminar in Atlanta last October, almost exactly a year ago. And there in the background of one photo, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, was Emma. They'd met a year ago, not 5 months ago like the financial records suggested. The money trail only showed when they'd stopped being careful, but the relationship had been going on much longer. I found Carl's ex-wife through his tagged photos and sent her a message introducing myself and explaining the situation. Within an hour she'd responded with information that made everything so much worse. Carl had cheated on her too, apparently made a habit of pursuing women at work. She also mentioned he still owed substantial child support. Turned out he did have a kid, just wasn't involved. And most interestingly, she'd heard through mutual friends that Carl had been applying for jobs in Colorado for the past 6 months. The company's annual dinner was scheduled for mid-November, a black tie event at the downtown convention center where Emma's pharmaceutical company celebrated achievements and handed out awards. Emma had mentioned it weeks ago, back when I still believed our marriage was real, asking me to save the date as her +1. I'd forgotten about it entirely until Patricia suggested we use it to our advantage. Public exposure serves multiple purposes, she explained. It documents the affair with witnesses present, it prevents her from controlling the narrative later, and honestly, it sends a message that actions have consequences. Plus, if this happens at a company event, HR will have to get involved, which creates additional pressure. I contacted Carl's ex-wife, a woman named Jennifer who'd been remarkably helpful throughout this process. She was understandably bitter about Carl's ongoing child support evasion and jumped at the chance to cause him problems. We spent an hour on the phone coordinating our plan, and by the end of the conversation, we were both almost looking forward to the dinner. The event was everything you'd expect from a corporate celebration: overpriced venue, mediocre catered food, open bar that would be doing heavy business by the end of the night, and a program full of self-congratulatory speeches. Emma had picked out my suit earlier that week, telling me how important it was that I looked good since several of her colleagues would be there. The irony of her wanting me to make a good impression on people who'd probably been watching her affair with Carl for months wasn't lost on me. We arrived at 6:30, Emma immediately spotting colleagues and pulling me into introductions. I smiled, shook hands, made small talk about quarterly projections and market trends, all while scanning the room for Carl. I found him near the bar, looking uncomfortable in a suit that didn't quite fit right, talking to a group of men I didn't recognize. He glanced over at one point, his eyes meeting Emma's across the room, and they exchanged a look I recognized now, the secret smile of two people who think they're getting away with something. Jennifer arrived at 7, having claimed to be Carl's date for the evening through some story about reconnecting after their divorce. Carl's face when he saw her walk in was worth the entire evening. Pure panic, the expression of a man watching his carefully constructed lies collapse in real time. "Carl, honey, sorry I'm late," Jennifer said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, kissing his cheek while he stood frozen. "Traffic was terrible. You should have texted me where you were sitting." I watched from across the room as Carl tried to navigate this disaster, stammering something about this being awkward, about not knowing she was coming. Jennifer just smiled sweetly and took his arm, steering him toward a table while making pleasant conversation with everyone around them. Emma had noticed the commotion, her face going pale as she recognized Jennifer from photos on Carl's social media. She excused herself from her conversation and started moving toward Carl, but I intercepted her smoothly, taking her elbow and guiding her toward our assigned seats. "Everything okay?" I asked with false concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." That woman with Carl, I think she's his ex-wife. What is she doing here?" "Maybe they're working things out. People do that sometimes, reconcile after divorce. Wouldn't that be nice?" Emma's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. The dinner portion of the evening proceeded normally, though I noticed Emma barely touched her food and kept glancing toward Carl's table where Jennifer was playing her role perfectly, acting like a devoted date while Carl looked increasingly miserable. The awards ceremony began at 8:30, with the company president droning on about fiscal achievements and market growth. I waited until he finished and they opened the floor for employee recognition, that awkward portion of the evening where people could share appreciations or announcements. I'd coordinated timing with Jennifer through subtle text messages throughout dinner. When the moment came, I stood up, Emma's hand shooting out to grab my wrist. "What are you doing?" she whispered urgently. "Just want to share something with your colleagues," I said, gently removing her hand and walking toward the front of the room where a microphone and projection screen were set up for the presentations. The room quieted as I reached the podium, several hundred faces turning toward me with polite curiosity. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the projection system, exactly as Patricia's tech consultant had walked me through. "Good evening, everyone. My name is David Thornton, and many of you know my wife Emma from the regional sales division." Emma's face had gone completely white. She was half standing from her seat, looking between me and the exits like she was calculating whether she could run. I wanted to share some photos from a recent trip Emma took. She called it a work retreat, but I think the images tell a different story. The first photo appeared on the screen behind me, Emma and Carl at the cabin, clearly visible through the window, holding wine glasses and laughing. A murmur went through the crowd. I clicked to the next image, them looking at real estate listings together. Then another, Carl's hand on Emma's back in a gesture that was unmistakably intimate. "That's Carl Henderson from Corporate Communications," I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Maybe some of you have noticed them spending time together. I certainly didn't, not until I found these." I displayed the mortgage pre-approval documents next, highlighting where Carl had listed Emma as his fiancée and used our combined income to qualify for loans. That's mortgage fraud, by the way. Federal crime. Uses falsified relationship status and financial information to deceive lending institutions. The room had gone completely silent except for the sound of chairs scraping as people turned to look at Carl and Emma. Carl was trying to stand, probably to leave, but Jennifer had her hand firmly on his shoulder, keeping him in place. Emma had her face in her hands. I also discovered approximately $27,000 in marital assets spent on this affair over the past year, I continued, pulling up the spreadsheet of highlighted charges. Flowers, jewelry, expensive dinners, hotel rooms, a $5,000 deposit on a house in Colorado. All funded through our joint account while Emma told me she was working late or attending yoga classes. I looked directly at Emma then, saw tears streaming down her face, but felt nothing except a distant satisfaction that the truth was finally public. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. The evidence has been provided to HR for workplace ethics violations and to the FBI for the mortgage fraud. Carl's ex-wife Jennifer is also filing for increased child support enforcement since apparently he owes nearly $40,000 in back payments while spending our money on romantic getaways. The chaos that erupted was immediate and spectacular. People were shouting questions, Emma was sobbing, Carl had finally managed to stand and was yelling something about this being slander, and Jennifer was loudly confirming every detail about the child support. Security started moving toward the commotion, but I was already walking calmly toward the exit, having said everything I needed to say. The fallout was swift and absolutely devastating for both Emma and Carl. By Monday morning, HR had launched a formal investigation into workplace ethics violations, specifically their relationship that had clearly impacted business decisions and resource allocation. Turned out several of those business trips Emma had taken were actually vacations with Carl that she'd expensed to the company. The mortgage fraud evidence I'd provided made its way to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and while federal investigations move slowly, the mere existence of an open case was enough to destroy Carl's job prospects. The Denver tech startup rescinded their offer within 48 hours of the news breaking, citing concerns about his integrity and judgment. His current employer terminated him for cause 2 days later, meaning no severance package and no positive reference for future employment. Jennifer's attorney immediately filed for emergency wage garnishment based on Carl's demonstrated flight risk, and the court agreed, freezing his bank accounts until the $40,000 in back child support was addressed. Emma's situation wasn't much better. The company couldn't fire her for the affair itself, but they could and did terminate her for misuse of company resources and fraudulent expense reports. Her professional reputation in the pharmaceutical industry was thoroughly destroyed. Word travels fast in specialized fields, and nobody wants to hire someone known for lying and breaking ethics policies. The divorce proceedings were remarkably quick given how much Patricia and I had prepared. Emma's attorney tried to argue for a 50-50 asset split, but Patricia presented the evidence of Emma's systematic deception, her misappropriation of marital funds for the affair, and her participation in mortgage fraud. The judge was not sympathetic. Final settlement gave me 75% of all marital assets, including the house, both cars, and the majority of our investment accounts. Emma walked away with minimal savings, no home, no job, and a professional reputation that made finding work in her field nearly impossible. I heard through former mutual friends that she'd moved into a studio apartment on the east side, the same industrial district where she used to withdraw cash every Tuesday. She'd taken an entry-level position at a call center, answering customer service complaints for $9 an hour, a far cry from her previous $60,000 regional sales manager salary. The irony of her ending up in that neighborhood wasn't lost on me. Carl's trajectory was even worse. With no job, frozen accounts, and mounting legal problems from both the mortgage fraud case and Jennifer's child support enforcement, he'd moved back in with his parents in their retirement community. The Colorado dream house never materialized. The earnest money was forfeited and split between me and Jennifer as part of our respective legal settlements. Last I heard, Carl was working nights stocking shelves at a warehouse, most of his paycheck automatically garnished before he ever saw it. I sold our house in January, finding a buyer within 2 weeks who paid asking price. Didn't need the space anymore, didn't want the memories. I accepted a promotion at work that came with a significant raise and the opportunity to relocate to Austin to open a new regional office. Fresh start, new city, warm weather, and a thriving professional community. The kind of opportunity one might have turned down a year ago because Emma had roots here, because we'd built a life in this city. Now I had no reason to stay. Austin suited me. I found a condo downtown with a view of the river, joined a recreational basketball league, started attending industry networking events where I met actual interesting people who weren't lying about their work retreats. 3 months after moving, I met Rachel at a friend's barbecue. She was a project manager for a construction firm, funny and straightforward in a way I'd forgotten was possible. She paid for her own dinner on our first date and actually meant it when she suggested splitting the check. Our second date, she told me about her ex-husband who'd cheated, and I told her about Emma and Carl, and we bonded over both having learned the hard way that some people view relationships as transactions rather than partnerships. 6 months later we moved in together, both of us taking it slow but confident. She never once asked me to fund her lifestyle or cover her bills. We split everything evenly, made decisions together, communicated openly about money and plans and future goals. The contrast between her and Emma was so stark it made me realize how thoroughly I'd been accepting unacceptable behavior for years. I ran into Sarah, Emma's former best friend, at a coffee shop about a year after everything imploded. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me but came over anyway. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I should have told you something was wrong. I knew she was being shady, I just didn't know how bad it was. You tried to be a good friend to her. I don't blame you for that." "She calls me sometimes," Sarah admitted. "Late at night, drunk, crying about how everything went wrong. About how she threw away a good life for a fantasy that disappeared the moment reality hit." I took a sip of my coffee, feeling nothing at all toward Emma. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just complete indifference. "How's Carl?" I asked, more curious than invested. "Gone. He left town about 6 months ago, stopped answering her calls. I think he blamed her for everything falling apart, like she was the reason he got caught rather than his own actions being the problem. She's alone now, working that call center job, living in that tiny apartment. She asked about you once, if I'd heard how you were doing." "What did you tell her?" "That you'd moved to Austin and seemed happy." She cried for like an hour. Sarah looked at me carefully. "Are you happy?" I thought about Rachel waiting at home, probably already started dinner. Thought about my condo and my new job and the life I'd built from the wreckage of my marriage. Thought about how I'd learned that the greatest revenge isn't hatred or anger, but simply building something better without the people who betrayed you. "Yeah," I said honestly. "I really am." Emma's last attempt at contact came through email about 18 months after the divorce finalized. A long, rambling message sent at 2 in the morning detailing her regrets, her realization that she'd destroyed the best thing in her life, her hope that maybe someday I could forgive her. She didn't ask to get back together, even she wasn't delusional enough for that, but she wanted absolution, wanted me to tell her it was okay, that I understood, that we could at least be friendly. I read it once, then archived it without responding. She didn't deserve my anger, but she also didn't deserve my forgiveness. She'd made her choices deliberately, systematically, over the course of more than a year. She'd lied to my face, spent our money on another man, planned an entire future that didn't include me while pretending we were building one together. The consequences she was living with weren't my doing, they were the natural result of her own actions. Rachel and I got engaged last month. Simple proposal, just us at home after dinner, exactly how we both wanted it. We're planning a small wedding in the fall, immediate family only, nothing elaborate or expensive. We're saving money for a house instead, something we'll actually live in rather than use as a prop for social media. Sometimes I think about that voicemail Emma left about the work retreat, how that one lie unraveled everything. If she'd been honest, if she'd just told me she wanted a divorce, things would have been painful but clean. Instead, she chose deception, and that choice cost her everything: her marriage, her career, her financial stability, her reputation, and ultimately even the relationship she'd sacrificed everything for. I don't check on her anymore, don't ask mutual friends for updates, don't wonder if she's doing better or worse. She's become what she always should have been. A chapter in my past, a lesson learned, a reminder that some people see love as a resource to exploit rather than a partnership to nurture. And I'm grateful, in a strange way, that she showed me who she really was. Better to learn it at 34 than at 44 or 54. Better to rebuild now than waste another decade on someone who viewed me as a financial safety net rather than a partner worth cherishing. The life I have now, with Rachel in Austin building something real and honest, is infinitely better than the illusion I was living with Emma. That voicemail about the work retreat ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it didn't feel that way at the time.